Well, off the bat, I want to clarify what I mean by power. Divine power, the ability to govern your thoughts and your emotions. That's the true power, the ability to govern your thoughts and emotions and stay in alignment with um, divinity, stay in alignment with the reality of God. All right, so anyway, that's not why I'm here. So listen, I have been like wanting to come live and chat and vibe out with y'all, but you know, I tend to want to make sure that everything that I do is purposeful. And this is along the lines of what I did come here to talk about this evening. How purpose is important. And in the context that I'm speaking is as a business owner or as someone who is the facilitator of an organization or leadership of an organization, a business, a ministry, whatever it may be. There's a spiritual side to it, to everything in life, including those things. And sometimes we forget about spirit when we're doing business, especially if we're doing it in the way that we've been kind of groomed to approach business. And that's very capitalistic, very based off of numbers, you know, gain. What can I gain? And so I want to talk a little bit about my journey as a business owner, entrepreneur, and approaching it from a fifth dimensional standpoint and not a capitalistic or profit, profit gain standpoint, which sounds super counterintuitive to most because it's like, what you in business for if you're not in business to make money? So it could sound counterintuitive, but I'm saying it is my understanding from understanding the reality of God, understanding the reality of life, understanding the laws of the universe, the laws of God, that everything we do should be in alignment with our own divine plan and purpose. And we have to, peace. Good to see you, sis. We have to tune into that plan and purpose in order to know what directions we need to go, what things we should be doing, even when it comes to business, and like what you should be offering, how you should be investing your money, your time, your efforts, all of that should be in alignment. So it's kind of a big topic and I don't want to hold you too long, but I just want to start with maybe parts of my journey. I started OU Ministries. If we look at OU Ministries, that ministries started, really was birthed out of my own walk in, striving to understand life, striving to seek God and understand God. And, I was just kind of following the hunches on my directions, where to go, what to do, what to study, what to try, And I ended up on the path of studying several religions and spiritual systems and being introduced to many spiritual concepts and methods and practices and trying my hand in life at some of them. And I gravitated greatly to learning the spiritual significance of the moon cycle and began to learn about meditation and prayers, and even started to learn about, rituals and routines around the moon. And that's where I kind of started to explore outside of my childhood upbringing, which was scary at first because it's like, what are people gonna think? And then it just became, where I had to stop caring about that. In retrospect, I look at that and see how ego was involved in that, but that's where I was being led, so that's where I went. So I started learning all these things, trying all these things, and my life changed. My life totally changed. At that time, I was kind of focused on manifesting things in my life, manifesting peace, manifesting joy, manifesting abundance. Peace was my main one that I wanted, and was able to find that. And then realizing, oh, wow, this stuff works. So let me manifest other things. So my focus was more so manifesting at that time, until it eventually evolved into focus being on really understanding what I am as a spiritual being, what this concept of God is, and how does that apply to my life. But nonetheless, on that journey, I began to learn things, experience things that I wanted to share, because it's just my nature to want to teach, to want to share, to want to nurture. It's in my, it's in my makeup. And that's how OU Ministry started, because I began to share my journey, and that's how it started. So eventually I started to feel like I want to do this full time. I left my, as my mama said, good paying job. You're gonna leave that good paying job to sell rocks? At that time, I was really into gemstones, teaching about how to use gemstones for holistic wellness. And I was starting to vend and sell them and all those different things. But I must say, I didn't leave the job and go into entrepreneurship for the money. It was very purpose driven, And that's why I want to make my first point as far as purpose and passion. Passion is when you feel, look up the etymology of the word passion. If you look up the etymology of the word passion, it's like yearning, with great emotions and desire. But it also says dis-ease or ailment, suffering, enduring. And so we use that word a lot, like, I'm just passionate, or this is my passion. And, really the only passion that we should hold and operate from is the passion to live the reality of God, truly. The passion to understand what is the reality of God. What does that mean for us? And once you really start to understand that, you start to understand there's a divine plan and purpose. Now that passion is to really stay in alignment with that. And oftentimes, when you're in alignment with that, shoot, some of the stuff you don't want to do, you passionately want to not do. You passionately you don't want to be the one called to hold that vision, or to steward that vision, to live that out, because it could be rough. It requires healing. It requires surrender. It requires a great level of faith. It requires ego death. It requires so much. And so the passion could be for it to all be over. You could have a passion for it to, not be your purpose. But, when you go into business from a purpose standpoint, that's where you're able to experience the impact, experience the abundance when you stay in purpose. When you stay in purpose. When you stay in and on purpose, right? That's really the word. I can talk about what that looks like sometimes, For me, as OU Ministries has expanded, it went from just being the ministry, mostly virtual, to, it went into having a brick and mortar, and now more responsibilities, and expanded into OU Marketplace, and eventually now OU Botanical Gardens. So it's now, a whole like OU, enterprise, if you will. And it comes with great responsibilities, And if you're not walking in purpose and you begin to be pressed by your passions, and you could say I have a passion for ministry, but in all honesty, our passion to survive or passion to make money or passion to be successful or passion to be those type of things oftentimes subtly trump our purpose. And I have to always, or I have constantly checked in when it comes to my movements, my offerings, the way I spend my time, my money, my investments, to make sure it's on purpose and in purpose and not associated to a passion. Remembering, I'm talking about passion from the aspect of it, the etymology of the word. If you look up the etymology of the word passion, you'll see that it says dis-ease or ailment or like yearning or like serious emotions behind something. And that just tells you right there that passion is driven by ego, oftentimes. Like I said, if it is a passion, you want to, I don't know. It's like I don't know if I could even hold a passion for the reality of God. I think I just hold a reverence, a honor, a love for, a more than a passion. Because whenever emotions is greatly involved, whenever this yearning and desiring, even if it's under the thought of like something good, it could be something that you deem, that anyone would deem good, but it could still subtly be from ego. It's wild how ego can be so subtle, And so you want to just be careful. Because when you're in a surrender mode, when you're in a posture of supplication and surrender, you don't have a whole lot of emotions involved. There's a scripture that says, be careful for nothing. Be careful for nothing. And if you look up the etymology of the word care, it means to, sorrow or burden or be anxious about. And that's very aligned with passion. So I just wanted to challenge the mind about this idea of passion. Because a lot of times when we're building our business or doing other things in life, we say, this is my passion, or, I turn passion. I think I've heard somebody say, I turn passion into purpose. But you want to be careful of that, because if you're turning a passion into purpose, maybe your purpose is not the will of God. It's your will being done, if that makes sense. So there's the word, purpose over passion, especially when you're talking about business. So in in an example, say you're in a season where your investments, the necessity for investments, the amount of currency needed for investments is greater than the income. I'm gonna say it like that. The need for currency for investments is greater than income. Okay, say you're in that situation. You may immediately be like, okay, what can I offer? What kind of sale? What kind of this? What kind of that to gain? But no, when you're doing it in purpose, you want to say, okay, where have I been inspired to share from, do something that's in alignment with purpose, with my divine purpose. You want to ask, where have I been finding joy in my ministry? Because joy, if you're experiencing joy or peace or anything on that vibration, we know it's in alignment with your purpose. And so you want to see what has brought me joy, or what feels good when I think about offering it, or what do I really enjoy doing when it comes to this, this business, which is essentially just a reflection of things that I enjoy or things that I love or things that and that's the other thing. If you're in business and you're doing something or offering something that's not from a place of something you love and something you enjoy and something that brings you peace and something that brings you joy, you maybe want to rethink that. If you're doing it just for the money, you definitely want to rethink that. If you're doing it just for any type of capitalism, you maybe want to rethink that. So say you're, again, in the situation where you have, investments that require a greater amount of currency than you're bringing in as far as income go. Don't immediately react with, what do I need to do? How do I need to budget? How do I need to stop? How do I need to decrease? How do I need to increase? Pause. And moving from purpose, you want to dig into purpose. You want to say, okay, what can I offer that can really allow me to shine my light? How can I really grow my peace in this, grow my joy in this? What has God put in my heart as an inspiration that felt good as an inspiration? Maybe I didn't know how I was going to offer, how I was going to do it, but the time is now for you to look at that. And what happens is, once you really bear down into that purpose and you tune into the vibration of your divine purpose, it is a vibrational match to your divine abundance and your divine peace. And so you'll be surprised at how doing that brings in the currency, because you're tuning into one form of currency, and that form of currency now is manifesting as other forms of currency that has that same vibration. That, y'all get that? That's clear? That's clear? I mean, this is a different way of thinking about it. This is the spiritual side of business. This is not just like, oh, law of manifestation or law of attraction, because a lot of times that can come from ego. Let's be clear. This is saying, hey, I have a divine plan and purpose. I know that I do. I'm tuning into spirit so I can stay in alignment with that divine plan and purpose. As I stay in alignment with that divine plan and purpose, I can stay in alignment with divine abundance, divine peace, divine joy, all divine power, divine faith, all these different type of things, divine zeal, divine will. My spiritual character, we're talking about spiritual character. So you're functioning in your business from a place of good spiritual character. And that's what we want to do. So give thanks, give thanks. Somebody said, wow, this word been coming up for the past few days. Time to look at it. Time to look at it. Passion. What are we, I'm always challenging us to look at the words that we find ourselves stating or, using or aligning with, to make sure that the vortex of that word is really where we're coming from. Because even if you don't mean it in that way, that word holds a certain frequency. And so it don't matter if you don't mean it. Subtly, you still connect with that frequency. So you just want to be careful with the words that you're aligning with. All right, peace and love, y'all. I pray that was a good word. Not just for business owners or entrepreneurs, but anybody, just trying to live a purposeful life. Live in and on purpose, not in passion. It's not about what you're passionate about. It's what is your divine plan, purpose? What is the divine plan for your life? Live in that. Live in that. And you'll experience all that come with that. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these other things will be added. And when it's added, it's in alignment with the kingdom, okay? With the kingdom of glory. All right, peace and love, y'all. Good to see you.